Right. So again, welcome. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for tonight's conversation about creator journalism. I'm Katja Ritterbusch. I'm president of SPJ Georgia, along with Janelle Williams, our vice president, who is going to look at the chat and help work the Zoom tonight. Let me first, before I introduce our moderator, who's then going to introduce our panelists, let me say a few quick words about SPJ, Society of Professional Journalists. For those of you who are not familiar with our organization, SPJ is, in fact, the oldest organization representing journalists in the United States. We're founded in 1909. And it's also the broadest, with professional and student chapters scattered across the country. Our mission is threefold, really: upholding and protecting First Amendment rights, freedom of the press. Number two is ethical journalism. You all know about the SPJ Code of Ethics, which actually turns 100 this year. And number three is education for student journalists, early career journalists, and veteran journalists, but also education for the public. We do a lot of media literacy projects as well. And tonight's topic really touches on all of these aspects, because as the community of freelancers and solo journalists is growing for many different reasons, there is really a push to professionalize freelancing, to kind of, we talked about this a little bit before we all came in, to really try to move away from this starving artist kind of image that unfortunately still is out there sometimes. And I'm sure all of you who freelance have experienced this perception once in a while. So I think this push also means to approach freelancing a little bit more like a business, like a very intentional and very strategic decision. And that's really where creator journalism comes in. I think many know the term. Most of us know the term. Many just really don't know how it works, how to get started, and how to make it a success. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight with our great lineup of panelists. And I'd like to introduce our moderator tonight, who has put together this panel, who came up with the idea. We talked about this for many months now. Patty Rasmussen is SPJ Georgia's freelance committee chair and an accomplished freelance journalist herself. Patty has a pretty diverse journalistic background. Over the course of her career, she has worked both on staff and independently, covering topics from baseball to economic development to highly technical issues like plastic molding. And she still manages to make that interesting. And that's pretty impressive, I have to say. Patty has written she has written book reviews. She has done feature stories. She has co-authored a memoir with former Major League Baseball Hall of Fame pitcher Billy Wagner. And she has managed multiple corporate social media accounts. Her client roster includes the Atlanta Braves, the AJC, Georgia Tech, Site Selection Magazine, and Georgia Trend Magazine. And Patty has served as both a fellow and a mentor through the Institute for Citizens and Scholars. So, Patty, thank you for organizing this event. Thank you for coming up with the idea, and the floor is yours.
Oh, thanks. Thank you so much. That makes me sound a lot more accomplished than I feel sometimes. But anyway, thank you all, and good evening. Curiosity is the hallmark of all good journalists, and we want to know more. I had lots of questions about all these Substack newsletters that I kept receiving, and the few that I actually paid money for. And so with all these questions, probably like you, I thought, let's just get some of these people together and ask them more of our questions. So that's what we're going to do tonight. I have three really cool people to talk to. I have to pull up my screen because I can't see with these glasses on. I'm so sorry. There we go. We have two newsletter authors with different missions, Martin Hughes, and independent journalist who writes the newsletter reporting on Ukraine. We also have Michele Hornish, a lawyer, a communications consultant, and strategist who started publishing the political action newsletter Small Deeds Done. And we're also joined by Liz Kelly Nilsson, a journalist and the co-founder of Project C, and the Independent Journalism Atlas. Through her work, Liz is invested in helping independent journalists and media creators build sustainable careers. So to start our session, I'm going to ask our panelists to briefly share their story of why they started their newsletters and their ultimate intention. And in the case of Liz, why she transitioned from traditional journalism into this brave new world of entrepreneurial journalism and a support role and the goals that she has for Project C. So let's start with Michele. You started Small Deeds Done in 2016, which was an auspicious year. So if you can take about 8 minutes and give us the backstory of why you started the newsletter and what your original goal was.
Sure. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. It's a pleasure to be with all of you tonight. I am Michele Hornish, and I started in 2016. Can you all see me? Is there a way for me to spot? Okay, there we go. Um, so in 2016, I was a mother of a young child. My son was 4 years old at the time. And I was in the middle of, I had a small business at the time. I had been a career lawyer, had spent my time being a heavy-hitting litigator. I came out of law school and actually went and clerked for the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Macon, Georgia. So I'm really familiar with Georgia, as a matter of fact. And then I went and worked in Chicago at big law firms and wrote brief after brief after brief and argued. And then I went in-house at the Illinois State Treasurer's Office and I worked in that political environment for a while and really found my footing advocating for people who needed advocacy. That administration changed. And when that administration changed, I left, worked for a plaintiff's shop for a little while, but then I had my son and decided to sort of take a step back from the practice of law because I couldn't delegate my son the way that I had intended to be able to delegate my son. Uh, and so I took a moment, and during that time, I actually started my own small photography business, just as a sort of side hobby, but also something to keep my mind occupied. And that was how I learned how to market. I learned how to create a newsletter, a MailChimp newsletter in that circumstance, actually, how to advertise on Facebook, and how to do lots of different things in graphic design, on Canva. Nothing that's special. I am certainly not a professional in any of those things. But it was enough to get me over the idea that I wasn't capable of trying something completely new, even though I was older than a college student. And then suddenly, 2016, the election happened. And I was sitting there distraught. I remember distinctly watching the concession speech with Hillary Clinton in a purple suit. And I was drinking coffee in a parking lot after I had just dropped my son off at preschool. And I promised myself right then and there that I was never going to feel as though I hadn't done enough in something in my life. The feeling of regret for not having done something more that I felt like I could do was more than I could bear. And so that really was when this idea of kind of the zoning concept, right? That you look for the highest and best use of land. And I thought, well, what is the highest and best use of a legally trained mind that likes to write and enjoys photography and art and melding all these things together and inspiring people and getting them to take action? And that was when I decided to create a newsletter, and I titled it Small Deeds Done after a Peter Marshall quote, which is small deeds done are better than great deeds planned. So each newsletter has, a story or an article or an essay, something. It can sometimes it's historical, sometimes it's present, sometimes it's a little goofy, sometimes it's, meaningful from my own past. And then it's followed up with some actions that people can take if they desire, to try to bring about the world that they want to see. And that has actually kept me busy, very busy each week. I publish every week on Tuesdays, and I have done that since November of 2016. It's also introduced me to lots of wonderful people like yourselves, and it's lived in lots of different places. MailChimp and WordPress and Substack. So I can obviously talk about some of those things. But I think it's been a way for me to use as many talents as I possibly can in as many different ways as I can to bring about the world that I want to see in the end. So that's my mission, I suppose, is to change the world. Just a tiny little mission.
Is that all?
That's for this year. We'll see what happens next year.
Well, okay, Martin, how about you? You launched reporting on Ukraine in 2024. Why Ukraine and why 2 years after the initial Russian invasion? What were you trying to accomplish with your reporting?
Well, thanks so much, Patty. I really appreciate the invitation to participate today. And thanks also to the Georgia SPJ chapter with this unprecedented assault against the free press. The SPJ shines more brightly than ever, and appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about this evolution in independent journalism. My path to, as it turned out, Substack started. I had been a journalist for almost 30 years, worked for a variety of publications, weeklies, dailies, glossy magazines. And in spring of 2021, I was a contract West Coast reporter for the Christian Science Monitor. And I decided to step away from the Monitor because I wanted to get back into full-time freelancing. And that was much more about greater autonomy and choice of topics. Now, at that time, we didn't know that Russia was going to launch the largest land invasion that Europe had seen since World War II. But in fall of 2021, there was a steady drip of headlines about Russia amassing troops on the border with Ukraine. And I had a feeling that this time Putin wasn't bluffing because he had done something very similar about 6 months earlier. And my thinking was, why would a ruthless dictator hold another dress rehearsal? It seemed pretty clear to me that he would go in. And the timing was that the Winter Olympics were happening in February of 2022. And I tried to make an educated guess that I thought Putin wouldn't invade during the games, which were being held in Beijing. I thought China's too important of an ally for Putin to potentially alienate, even though he had done something similar in 2008 during the Summer Games when he invaded Georgia. So I went to Kyiv. I was actually able to fly into Kyiv. The sky was still open 12 days before the full-scale invasion began. I did some reporting in southeastern Ukraine, which is where Russia first invaded back in 2014. And I was working at the time as a freelancer for the Monitor. I had contacted them and said, I'd like to go if you don't have anybody that's going to be on the ground. And they gave me the thumbs up. So I found myself in the middle of Kyiv on February 24th, 2022, woken up by the echo, deafening echo of artillery fire on the outskirts of the city. And here I'll just note, never stay in a high rise if you think you're going to be in a place that's going to be potentially under invasion. I was on the 17th floor in my Airbnb. So, I continued my reporting, and the Monitor provided support from afar, but there wasn't, I didn't have security with me. I didn't have I didn't have a photographer with me. I was on my own, which was fine. I mean, I wasn't entirely surprised that the war had started. I didn't think it would be a full-scale invasion. I figured Putin would try to primarily go after the area that Russia had already occupied. So I filed stories for the Monitor, also for a few other publications. And during that time, in working with the editors, I felt both a kind of external and internal tension. External because I had some ideas that I wanted to pursue, but the Monitor's editors had other ideas, all legitimate. But Ukraine for me is a different kind of story. My father was from Ukraine. He came to the United States in 1955 on the Queen Mary, a World War II refugee. I knew from him what Ukraine had suffered previously because of Russia. And this then became a passion project for me. It wasn't, quote, just another story. It was something that I wanted to pour all of my energy into. So after I returned from that first visit, I went back subsequently in the summer of 2022, and that was under my own flag. But war reporting, even when you're just on your own, is exorbitantly expensive, prohibitively so. So at the end of 2022, I was mulling the idea of launching a GoFundMe campaign to sustain my reporting. And I was initially going to ask for only 1,500. I had a lot of anxiety about asking for money in the first place, and then fearing that I'd ask for 1,500 and get maybe $20 and look the fool. And it was my partner Emily, who's with us on here today, who said, "No, dude, if you're going to do it, ask for 3,000." So I followed her very sage advice, and lo and behold, I blew past 3,000 within the first, I think, week of asking for donations. And part of the reason for doing that was because I could recognize already by the end of 2022, not even a full year into the war, that interest in freelance from Ukraine was starting to dwindle within newsrooms. Part of that has to do with the external forces in which newsrooms are now faced with smaller budgets, but it's also just the attention span of a country that's so removed from these kinds of conflicts. So I was able to make 2 more trips in 2023 thanks to the GoFundMe campaign, and I was both freelancing and also posting dispatches on social media. And the more I did that, the dispatches, the more I realized I wanted to write about Ukraine more personally. I wanted to weave in sort of stories that my father had told me. I wanted to give people an idea of what the civilians were really going through. If I have one regret from my coverage of the war in Afghanistan for Stars and Stripes, is that I didn't write more about the impact on civilians. So as we moved into 2024, I was thinking I'd already faced my fears with GoFundMe, and I was wrestling with the idea of starting a newsletter. And I was like, the world needs a newsletter like they need another newsletter, like they need another microbrew. It was like there are so many of them out there. But I wanted to pursue this kind of reporting. It felt to me like this was the future of my career. This was the subject that mattered to me more than anything. So I launched the newsletter, and as with GoFundMe, had a much better response than I ever anticipated. And I'm at about 1,900 subscribers. It's a modest number. About 8 or 9% of those people pay for the newsletter, and that has allowed me to continue doing what I feel is the most important work of my career. So.
I mean, I'm so glad you stuck with it. I can only imagine how tempting it must have been at times to just pull back and go and find a real job. But that missional work, that aspirational work, it pulls you, and I'm glad you stuck with it. I'm glad you believed in your work and in the thing that's feeding your heart right now, because it's powerful. The work you're doing is meaningful, and I'm really proud to support you, Martin. Okay. I'm enthusiastic about this panel, people. We've got Liz Kelly Nelson here too, and Liz, Project C came about from a fellowship project, I think.
Yeah.
So tell us more about that, and when you're done with that, I would really like it if you kind of segue us into the next portion of our conversation and define our terms for us and tell us what a creator journalist is. But first, tell us how you got to be where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much, Patty, for having me into SPJ Georgia for making this forum available to members. So I have been working in journalism for over 25 years, and the bulk of that is in what we laughingly now call trad journalism, in legacy media. And digital media, which many digital news organizations I would now also define as legacy media because things have changed so drastically and so quickly in terms of where people are placing their trust and getting their news and context from about the world. But I spent a wonderful 11 years at the Washington Post, where I had a variety of roles, but most of the bulk of my time there was spent as a reporter writing one of the Post's first blogs back in the day, which is where I think I got a bit of my start in entrepreneurial journalism. And even, I guess at that point, it would have been intrapreneurialism, like building something new within an existing organization. Then went to USA Today and the Gannett Network, where I worked not only with the large newspaper, but also with several local journalism outlets across the country. Did some time as the managing editor of the Palm Springs Desert Sun, and in that role really developed a love and respect for local journalism and how important it is to our democracy and to our communities and how we hold together as communities and help one another. And then my last kind of I guess real job, my last W-2 job in the journalism industry was at Vox Media at Vox.com, where I ran the audio team, but also then took on a role as vice president of the Vox, the yellow news brand. And it was really at Vox that I started thinking about a couple of things. That were precipitated by changes that we were seeing. The first change that we were seeing was a lot of our most talented journalists, many of them are younger journalists, were leaving to launch their own YouTube channels and newsletters. And around that time, we were coming up on getting ready to celebrate Vox's 10th anniversary as a news brand. And it had gone in that time from being this kind of pirate ship, right? Like that was a kind of built-in reaction to traditional media to becoming a bit of a part of traditional media. And so we were thinking, what does our second decade look like? And I started wondering, how are we going to get through our second decade if our youngest, most talented people keep leaving? So I started having conversations with them, which then quickly um, grew and rippled out into having conversations with journalists who were leaving other news organizations as well, and finding out the reasons that they were leaving. And one of them was kind of the second trend that I was noticing around the same time they were noticing too, and that was that audiences were abandoning traditional news in droves. I think it was between 2022 and 2023 that Vox saw a 40% decline in traffic to its website. And it wasn't just Vox. This was across the board. News organizations were seeing that drop off. I mean, you can attribute it to lots of reasons. People were tired of doom scrolling. COVID was changing the way that we all were interacting with our world and learning about the world and what we had capacity for emotionally. New platforms were ascendant, but also like trust really was degrading in institutions, and particularly in journalism institutions, where now it is at the lowest it's ever been. It's at 28%. When Gallup started measuring that in the 70s, it was at 74%. And then for me, the kind of like the third leg of the stool that led me to the conclusion of like wanting to go to Columbia and do my Sulzberger Fellowship and study creator journalism was I have a teenager. And at the time he was 13. He's now about to turn 16, which is just wild. But his primary news sources then and now continue to be YouTube and TikTok. And so I was looking at what he was seeing on those platforms. And while he was seeing some content that was great, stuff that was coming like Vox Explainer videos and videos coming from, independents that were doing good work, he was also seeing like Andrew Tate, right? And other folks. So all of that led me to thinking like I want to continue to be a part of the future of valuable, valid, fact-based, rigorous news and information getting next generation audiences. And so I left Vox in November of 2023 and spent the first half of 2024 at the Sulzberger Fellowship at Columbia University, where I did a deep dive and talked to many more journalists and came out of it to launch Project C, which started as a newsletter, but has now since grown into a community. We have now more than 200 journalists who are all members of the Project C community, which is primarily a Slack community where every day they are all helping one another, a lot of mutual aid going on. We do training, we do sessions as well. We did one last month that was about fact checking for independent creators, right? Like, how do you do that when you don't
Awesome.
have a fact checker?
Great.
And then I also partner with a lot of different institutions. I've partnered with Trusting News on research. I'm doing a partnership with them right now. I've partnered with Medill at Northwestern University. We just released a study with a group called the Center for News Technology and Innovation about how people are kind of making creator journalism work. Is it sustainable? So it's kind of field building, right? So it's like Project C is directly supporting creator journalists, but we are also trying to study this movement to figure out how we better support it. And then the third piece is the new business that I launched in January with two former Post colleagues, which is called the Independent Journalism Atlas. It's at journalismatlas.com, and it is a growing database. I think we're up to 1,400 now, independent journalism creators, primarily at this point. US based, but we are partnering with some organizations to start growing out regional and global lists around the world as well, with the idea being that if you don't see it, you can't support it. And so we need to see the scale of this. And so really the Independent Journalism Atlas, one use case of it is that it's consumer facing, but it's also very much aimed at people who are building products, people who are looking for opportunities to grow revenue potential solutions for these folks. It's for funders who are looking at how do I fund philanthropic projects that will actually have the impact I'm looking for, right? Like maybe these creators are reaching audiences that traditional news isn't. And it's for academics and others, and very much so for the traditional journalism industry to understand how things are changing because most top editors at news organizations are not scrolling through TikTok. And so they like it's almost become an invisible space, like where most of their audience is going, they have no experience of.
Right.
So that's my backstory. So a little bit on the terms. So for both Project C and the Independent Journalism Atlas, we define creator journalism and creator journalists as people who are doing characteristically journalistic work, right? So it shares some of those elements of traditional journalism, fact-based, it's transparent. There are sources being cited, like we understand how this is being funded, but doing it on distributed platforms and not under the umbrella of another like larger news brand. So,
Okay.
it is the difference between Margaret Sullivan, who was formerly the ombudswoman for the New York Times and the Washington Post, now writing a Substack, which she is independently doing, where she still is taking the Washington Post and the New York Times and now many other news organizations to task for questionable ethics, right? But doing that independently and is being funded by readers who, like Martin and Michele, are paying directly for their newsletter products. And so that is a little bit on the terminology. We specifically, with the Independent Journalism Atlas, called it the Independent Journalism Atlas, not the Independent Journalist Atlas, because many people who are being drawn to do this work don't define themselves as journalists. So there
Right.
are folks like Martin, right? Like who come from a traditional journalism background, but there are also people like there's a woman whose name is Caitlin Gentilina who writes a Substack called Your Local Epidemiologist, and she has
Yes.
become the top public health news source for many Americans. But she's a trained epidemiologist, worked at the CDC, but she wants to work and is working journalistically. So we include her in the atlas and in the definition of what we're doing.
Okay. What is the difference between a creator journalist and an independent journalist and a freelancer? Or is there no difference?
Yeah, I mean, so like this is kind of like interpreting the Bible, right? Like, it's like depending on what argument you want to make, you can find supporting material to support your thesis. I think when we first started talking about creator journalism in a sustained way a couple of years ago, like the knee-jerk response from people was like, "Oh, you mean freelancers?" And no, like that, like I get it. I
Right.
get why one would have that reaction, but the difference is freelancers in most cases are contracting with a brand and
Right.
that content that's being created is being run under the banner of that brand, right? Like Martin, working for Mother Jones, like, to produce content that would then run on their site, which is great. Creator model journalists are doing it kind of like it's like a pirate ship running under its own flag, right? Like you are
Mhm.
out there doing it, you're building a brand for yourself. So, like I mentioned that I was one of the first bloggers at the Washington Post. The other one was a guy named Chris Cillizza,
Right.
who founded the Fix blog there at the Washington Post, then went on to be a CNN commentator. He now has a Substack and a YouTube channel that it's standalone. He does not publish for the Washington Post. He doesn't publish under CNN's brand. Chris Cillizza is the brand. And this is, not anything new, honestly. Like Chris Cillizza was a star when he was at the Washington Post and a star at
Right.
CNN. And you see that still with news organizations. There are usually marquee names. What we're
Hmm.
seeing now, even with news organizations, is that more and more of those marquee names are starting to realize that they can go independent. And in many cases, end up making more money, but also have the editorial freedom to do the work that they want to do without, like, especially if you think about cases like the Washington Post, where there's some real questionable ethics coming from the top of the food chain in
Hmm.
ownership there. These journalists don't want to put up with that, right? And so if they can
Right.
sustainably go do this work independently, they will.
Yeah. Michelle, you mentioned that you had also worked on the WordPress, I think you said, platform. Uh,
Yeah, sorry, I forgot that I muted myself. Yeah, so for a very
why,
long,
yeah, why did you switch over to Substack?
so I did that just for ease of use, right? So I mean, that's kind of one of the nice things about doing all of this yourself is that you can decide what actually works best with your process. And over time, I just decided that I wanted to migrate it over to Substack rather than having, you know, posting something on a WordPress site and then also posting it, on MailChimp and having multiple things going on at the same time. Having it all on Substack was just a simpler, easier, an easier lift for me. I found that to be a very user-friendly newsletter site. But I know that there are a lot of other options that people are using out there. And WordPress was absolutely fine for a
Right.
really long time and
Yeah.
is still where the archives of Small Deeds Done live to this day. So
You mentioned too, and I've read that I read this on your site, that you've posted weekly since 2016. I know how hard it is to blog consistently because I've done it myself. Um, that is amazing. What is the key to consistent posting?
deadlines.
Setting
Uh,
setting
it,
yourself a deadline every week, or what do you do?
so it is a deadline every week. Every Tuesday, I publish, and that is regardless of what's going on. So every single week, I know that I have a deadline on Tuesday. I know what I have to get done in advance. So Monday night, usually I'm putting the finishing touches on things because I record all of my own audio for the read aloud portion that you can include on a Substack. And I have all of that ready, before I go to bed, or I'm up until 3 in the morning getting it finished. And that does a couple things for me. I am the type of person who wants to make something perfect before it goes out. So the past however many years it's been now, have been really good and humbling for me to learn. It's never going to be perfect.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's going to land, sometimes it's not going to land.
Right.
Sometimes the words will come, sometimes they won't come. But you get better over time. I like to think that I've become a better writer over time. I know that I've strengthened my writing muscle significantly over time. Um, but I really think that it's just holding yourself to that specific if you want to get something out every week, you have to set, for me, you have to set a specific day. It can't just be, I'm going to get something out every week, because then you're going to end up trying to define for yourself, what is a week? Does a week begin on Monday? Does it end on, what day does it end on? So that, that was when I finally sat down and said, it's going to go out every day, every week on Tuesdays, and that's just going to be the way that it is.
Martin, how much time does it take you? Well, you don't publish the way Michele publishes. So tell me about what you do, what's your process, and how you manage your Substack newsletter, because yours is done differently.
Yeah, I admire Michelle's productivity very, very much because I'm a subscriber, and there it is every week.
Yeah.
So I find that the angrier I am about something in the news, the faster I write. So if I'm reacting to something like the infamous Oval Office meeting in which Trump and Vance tag team Zelensky, I was like a Roman candle. My brain just exploded. And I thought, what am I going to do with all this fury? And I was like, okay, well, how about I write? I have the newsletter. And so I published that a few hours later after that happened. But the way I've approached the newsletter typically is the term slow journalism is sort of in vogue. I don't think of the work that I do deliberately like that, but the way things have worked, thanks to the GoFundMe donations and the newsletter subscriptions, I'm still able to make 1 to 2 trips to Ukraine each year for a period of, say, 6 to 8 weeks. And what I do when I'm there is I don't publish very much. I might write a couple of newsletters while I'm on the ground, but the idea is to use that time, the sort of precious resources that readers have provided for me, to report as much as I can and sort of fill my quiver with as many arrows as possible, so that when I do come back, then I can take the time to write those stories at the pace that I believe that they need. I've never been a fast writer. Any editor I've worked for over the years will tell you that. So to some degree, the newsletter fits kind of my metabolism, my journalism metabolism. But it's also about having the autonomy as an independent journalist to get on the ground and then follow sort of my instincts and not feel like I have to answer to the boss, back in Washington or New York. And I do see the benefit of that. And I still do occasionally freelance stories to other outlets, taking what I have found on the ground. But there's an important difference. I no longer ask them if they want the story, and then I go and report it. I report the story, I write the story, and then I say, here it is. Do you want it? And this has been a revelation for me. I have, up to this point, have a 1,000 percentage batting rate. Like my batting average, whenever I send those stories out, I may not get a yes to the first editor I send it to, but that has been a sort of validation for me. And then in the meantime, I try to write the newsletter. And that has been the primary platform for me over this last, I would say, year to 18 months, because as I talked about earlier, the interest in Ukraine has just shrunk over time. We're now into the 5th year of the war, and the flagship legacy outlets still cover it very, very closely. And you have, for instance, Tim Mack, the Counteroffensive. It's an enormously successful newsletter that is an all-Ukrainian newsroom, as I understand it, apart from Tim himself. But so for me, as an independent operator, I just have to sort of allocate my mental resources, such as they are, and then the reporting material that I gather on each of these trips.
Liz, I was wondering if you could give me a sense of some of the most, well, let me back up. I know that Project C offers a course called Going Solo, I think is what it's called, an 8-week course to content creators or creator journalists.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us an idea of what's involved in that course? and maybe the newsletter platforms other than Substack that you recommend.
Yeah, sure. So first, yeah, going solo is an 8-week course that we offer, and it really was designed for journalists, right, who are leaving news organizations and going independent because in J school and in newsrooms, we didn't learn a lot about the business side of journalism. And then add to that being a small business and having to do everything yourself. Like there's a lot involved with that that we just really need to get up to speed on quickly if we're going to be sustainable doing this work and successful ultimately. So we don't teach journalism in this 8-week course. We teach, you know, we start with literally helping folks find their focus, right? Like, what is your niche? Like, most creator journalism that is successful, just like most influencers, are doing something that's usually pretty narrowly defined. Martin writing about Ukraine. It's not a general interest publication. He's not also giving you the, football scores. And so it's like really finding like what is the unique thing that you are doing. There may be other people writing about the same topic, as he notes, like the counteroffensive exists and a lot of news organizations are covering this, but like maybe they don't have that emotional connection that Martin has from, his family emigrating, right? Or the access to specific people. And so there's a very clear case for him to understand why he is the person to write that newsletter and why he is delivering something of value that people will not only want to subscribe to, but pay for. And so, like, we help people kind of get to that point first. And then from there, it's kind of like then, like, we go into something that you were asking Michelle about, which is if you're doing this alone, how do you do it like consistently? Right? Like, what does that look like? If you're the only person doing this, like, you're not in a newsroom anymore where you've got, like, you've only have to write one article a month because there are, like, is a newsroom of 100 people and they're also filling, like, the news hole as well. So we help to, like, think about how do you pace yourself, right? Like, what does that look like? How do you create kind of repeatable formats and other things that will allow you to do this on a weekly basis? And then maybe save some of your time if you're going to take a big swing on something that maybe you don't do quite as often. Um,
Mm.
we teach about founding a small business, right? Like, what is an LLC versus an S corp? What do you have to do? What are the pieces you need to have in place? How much money do you need to squirrel away if you're going to do this as your full-time gig, like before you either walk away from your job or get laid off, right? Like, what kind of runway do you need? And then that helps determine like revenue targets too, right? Like,
Right.
what do you need to make? And then that gets into how do you market yourself, right? Like how, and let me tell you, journalists don't like marketing themselves. And so that is like a mindset shift that we try to help people get through. The only thing that we do maintain in the workshops that is a little bit more close to traditional journalism is we do one full module on ethics and
Mm.
credibility because we think that that's really important and it's something that we want to make sure is carried forward into this new world of journalism, but we recognize that it's not going to be done exactly the same way as it was modeled for us in traditional newsrooms. So that's kind of where we started. We now have since, we offer that publicly. People can sign up and pay, and we run those cohorts a couple of times a year. We're also now doing kind of more bespoke cohorts. We are in the midst right now of a private cohort for Muslim American creator journalists
Yeah.
that is funded by a foundation. And we have some more of those coming down the pike. And then, for folks who are members of the Project C community, as I said, we do monthly training that's more kind of like pop-up
Mhm.
training, right, within the community that people can come to, whether it is that fact checking or making vertical video or, basically we keep our ear to the ground in the community for what folks want to listen for. And I can't remember what your second question was.
Oh, other platforms that you
Oh,
recommend that you
yeah.
that
Yeah. I
you
mean,
I know that people aren't there's been some migration from Substack for various reasons, but tell me about some of the other platforms.
yeah, so for sure. So it's interesting you're asking this week because there's been a lot of talk in the Project C community this week about a place that creators thought was relatively ethically okay to be, which is Beehive versus Substack, because the founder of Beehive came out as supporting Spencer Pratt in the LA mayor's race. And so people are in many, many people are like that, like doesn't align with my values. And so now that has them
Right.
wondering, like, is Beehive where I want to be? Which, really inspired a conversation about like really you can't expect any of these platforms to be doing like providing this tool to you and for altruistic reasons, right?
Right.
So there are many reasons to leave Substack. I have left Substack. I think there are many good reasons to be on Substack. It's very easy to get up to speed. It is reliable. It allows you to grow your audience quickly, and they have a lot of tools for you in that way. I left because they're opaque in some ways in terms of audience first party data, and
Mhm.
knowing who your audience is, and also because they take a significant chunk of subscriber fees. So I am on Beehive, but I mean, quite honestly, like I'm always thinking like, oh, maybe I should try Ghost, which is another one, right? Like Ghost is more of a federated kind of like open source platform that is a little bit more like a Blue Sky, right? Like
Mhm.
not in presentation, but in terms of the kind of like the reason that they became a business, right? Like they're trying to put the power back into the creator's hands. So those are three if you're a newsletter writer. We are also, we work with video first creators as well. So
Right.
you've got your TikToks, you've got Instagram, you've got YouTube, which has, the traditional horizontal video, but also now vertical video. WordPress is still going strong, right? So that is an
Hmm.
option out there as well. And now we are seeing more and more folks who are building their own platform using things like Claude Cowork and Claude Code, where you don't need to be beholden to any of those platforms, but can actually build your own custom solutions. So there are many to choose from, but I think if you are somebody who just is just contemplating making this shift and maybe dabbling, I think probably a Substack or a Beehive, if you're a writer, is going to be a good place to at least use as a sandbox.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Um, Finally, I want to finish up this round of questions and then we're going to turn it over to the audience. But I do have one more question I wanted to ask Michele before we move on, and that's about audience engagement and kind of moving followers into subscribers and engaging with your audience and building communities and that sort of thing because you have a fair number of people who follow you. You have a very big audience,
Oh,
Michele,
thanks.
and a good number of subscribers, and two of them are right here. And me and Martin and me, whatever. Anyway, we're here, and so anyway, I wondered, what do you do to build that community, and also how do you turn those followers into subscribers?
Those are great questions. Those are important questions. And I think that those are the same questions that a lot of people have whenever they start a newsletter, right? It's not just where do I go and how do I set it up, but it's now how do I get all the people who are going to read this thing? Or am I just writing a diary for myself, which also is fine.
Yeah.
And that was, to be honest, that's what I did for a good number of months, if not years, when I first started. Was I was kind of building that muscle that I needed to build in order for me to be able to be as uh, market driven as I can be now, where I know who I am, I know what my voice sounds like. I can be myself on social media, for example. And I think sometimes people follow me on Substack in particular because of the notes feature, which is very similar to a Twitter or a Blue Sky or a Threads. And so I'll put notes up about things that I'm thinking about, and I see many subscribers come from that avenue. People who have, I say something spicy about something that's happened, in the news, for example, something that just comes to me, and I'm thinking about writing about it. And frankly, I'm testing to see if people would be interested in reading about that, or if that's something that the community at large is top of mind. And the reactions that I get and the conversation that happens in the comments will often educate me, which is helpful, but it will also tell me what people are interested in looking at. And I end up getting some subscribers from that often, or followers. And on Substack in particular, I think I have 20,000 followers, but I have, 8,100 or 8,200 subscribers. So you can have two different numbers. So you can have a lot more followers than you do subscribers. So that's something to know about on that platform in particular. So I think that being confident enough to use your voice in lots of different places, I would give as a helpful marketing tool or a strategy, I suppose. Um, because the more that I have been out there publicly on Threads or on Blue Sky or on Substack, being myself and sharing some of the content, some of the quotes from some of my pieces, the more that I do that, the more people end up following me and reading the Substack ultimately, which is really what we all want, right? So it's really just being comfortable with getting out in front of people and networking in a digital space in a different way than what I think a lot of us, or I mean, at least me, I'm Generation X, I'm Gen X, so I did not grow up in the digital space natively. So I'm not a millennial or, younger. So I was kind of learning all of this on the fly. And I think maybe that's a good lesson too, that we all can learn these kinds of tricks and tips and how to rub elbows with people in the digital space.
Right. Well, I have a ton of questions, but I feel very certain that our audience does as well, and I would like to open this up to them before our time runs out. We actually have some questions in our chat. I'm going to go ahead and read one of them out. And then once that's answered, if someone wanted to, also, if you want to ask a question on using, what is it called, Katja? With the open microphone, you could do that too. But I'm going to ask Martha Dalton's question. When you publish on a platform like Substack, how do you handle editing? Not just copy editing, but thinking through the process with an editor. Is that something Project C can help with? How about that, Liz?
Yeah, so yeah, the way to answer this, I think, is the editing is not necessarily about the platform, whether it be Substack or Beehive. It's really about your process and the support that you're able to line up for your work. 9 out of 10 of the creator journalists that I talk to would love to work with an editor, but don't because they can't afford it. So, Project C, like we don't like membership does not give you an automatic editor, but what we do find that happens in Project C is a lot of peer editing. So people will say, can somebody put a pair of eyes on like whether it's a newsletter that I have in draft form or a video that I've put together and like they just want some feedback on that. And there are some cases where that editing becomes much more intensive because somebody is working on something that is an investigative piece, right? Or something that's more enterprising and actual, kind of like original reporting versus just, opinion or putting something out there that's already out there. So we see a lot of that happening. So it's really not about the platform at that point. But what I will say is that we are starting to see, I think, like an inkling of there being a layer of that that's going to start becoming a part of the infrastructure for creator journalism because not only are reporters being laid off in record numbers by newsrooms, but so are all of these other roles, whether it be social media producers, editors, videographers, data folks, right, who do data viz or data crunching. And so they are all looking for ways to continue doing their work too. So, I was at a journalism festival a month ago in Italy, and somebody was talking to me about something which I thought was really exciting, which was building basically a guild of these folks, right? Who stand ready to do this work for creator journalists. So what we need to do is continue to find ways for creator journalists to be able to monetize so that they can afford to pay for that. Like, another approach to that would be also to go find somebody who can provide some sort of grant funding, right? To
Yeah.
give us at least a way to get editing into these. But I think I would say right now that the best option is finding a community that is doing similar work to what you're doing, working independently and wants to support you in kind of a trade manner. And Project C is one place to do that. I'm sure there are others, but it's kind of a beautiful thing to see.
If anyone has another question, you can come off mic and ask it.
Uh, Hi there. My name is Rebecca Grapevine. I'm a reporter here in Atlanta, and I think I actually know Emily. I think she has had the misfortune, perhaps, of editing a project I worked on. So I cover healthcare, and there's a huge gap in information, especially because my bureau, which was Health Beat Atlanta, is shutting down as of tomorrow. So I am launching I was planning to launch a Substack, unless you guys convince me differently, that would sort of fill in the need for like quick healthcare news in Georgia. And I think one of the problems with what we were doing at HealthBeat was it was a little narrowly focused on public health, and there's a broader audience for things like hospital mergers and closures and all the other things that go along with healthcare. So I feel pretty convinced there's a need. I'm trying to decide about the money piece. And I guess I'm just curious, like, I thought maybe start out for free and then set a price point or ask for donations. I mean, I'm sort of using this fail fast mantra that startups work off of, and just curious about the pricing. And I really relate to the thing of like asking for money is like so uncomfortable for me, like as a Southerner, as whatever. But we don't ask for things. We just kind of gently hope that you might like kick us a few dollars versus like, hey, we need money.
Yeah, I mean, I will very briefly, but then I would love to hear from both Martin and Michelle about how they have come to that piece of this work. You are not alone in feeling that way. That is like the most common, I think, hesitation that people have is how do I ask for money? It just feels unnatural, especially after we've worked in newsrooms for years where we've been told there's an iron curtain between us and the business side, and that what we do is missional, which it is, but and vocational. However, like if we want to survive doing this work, we need to get very comfortable very quickly asking to be paid for it. And I think that the way that I see that done most elegantly and that I recommend is by leaning into the mission, right? And the fact that if you are going to be doing this work, you can't do it for free, right? And so being able to appeal to people who support the work that you're doing and who want you to be able to do that work and to tell them what it takes to actually be able to do that. Like we have examples of members of the Project C community who in their newsletters will actually say how much it costs them each month, right? To
Mm.
actually like what they're paying in software fees, what they need to pay their rent, all of these things. Caitlin Dewey, who's a member of the community who writes the newsletter Links I Would G-Chat You If We Were Friends, last year did an appeal right before she went out on maternal leave. She was about to have a baby, and she said, the only way that I'm going to be able to actually take 2 months off to be with my newborn child is if I get more people to subscribe to this newsletter. And so she took a month before she went on maternal leave and did a sustained campaign asking, and she got it. And not only did she make her number that she needed to be able to take that leave, she got so much feedback from her audience saying why they valued her work so much. So I would say for you, don't start off free, right? Like, I mean, that's actually like the time to ask for money is when you're launching. You can, like Martin, have like a founding membership tier where like people who want to support your ability to even be able to make this leap want to support you. So, but I'll stop there and I'd love to hear from Martin and Michelle.
I think that I would echo that and say, that you should give people the opportunity to help support you, especially since this is something that you've already assessed that there's a need. You know how to fill that need. You've already got your Substack. I think that you've already linked it down below. It's insidegeorgiahealth.com. Is that right? For your Substack. So
Thank
I
you.
tried to subscribe, but unfortunately, I want to make sure that I'm actually paying attention to the program. So I will definitely subscribe. And I also often share things to read with my Substack audience myself, and I'm more than happy to share that. I know lots of other creators would do the same thing. And I've seen a lot of really interesting sort of niche state-based information on really small topics. They're not small, but they're very focused topics that do really well because there are people who are going to be very interested in that thing. And they know that you are the person that they can look to if they want to know something about that thing. And that is valuable. That is very valuable. And the amount of time that you spend getting that information, synthesizing it, and then putting it back out there in a usable way, that's worth a lot of money. So don't ever discount that. There are all those hard costs that are true, but there's also just the cost of your human time and your expertise and your experience, which you are bringing into this already. So I hope that you will create a founding level. I hope that you will, make paid levels if you feel like you need to. I know a lot of people who also have a free version of their newsletter that's maybe more of a roundup, something that's an easier lift each week. And then they also have something that they spend a little bit more time on that's maybe behind a paywall. If you feel like you want to give people a way to dip their toe in the water, that's another option that you can try. I've always had a free newsletter, but again, that's because it's mainly my mission. My mission, I am mission driven in getting this newsletter out there. But I do know a lot of other people who have their entire newsletter is paid only. So it really is kind of up to you. I will say there was something else that I wish that I kind of would have mentioned before because I think it dovetails well into this, and then I want to hear what Martin has to say as far as advice. But I think that, and it kind of goes back, Liz, to something that you were talking about earlier about Chris Salisa and how he was sort of a star. He was always a star at CNN. He was a star at the Washington Post. Here he's a star here. There, there is a difference now in how people are looking at journalists and creators. And anyone can now become someone who is a trusted Chris Salisa, right? And anyone can become someone that people look to and say, "Oh, it's Caitlin, my epidemiologist friend that just showed up in my inbox, and she's going to tell me, do I need to worry about this or do I not? She's going to give me a different way to look at things, and I trust her because I know that she knows what she's talking about." That's the same kind of thing that you're talking about here, which again is very valuable. Oh, my Georgia Health newsletter just showed up. I know that I'm going to be able to open that up and learn all of these things. And that is you sort of becoming an influencer in that space just through a newsletter platform rather than being, on TV first, which you can always have a YouTube channel and an Instagram and all of those other things too. Okay,
All right,
Mark.
well, I'll keep it brief and just second what Michele and Liz have said. And I'll add, Rebecca, I'm a Midwesterner, so it's just as awkward for a Midwesterner to ask for money as it is a Southerner. So game recognizes game. I totally get where you're coming from on that front. I had to talk myself into it with GoFundMe. And then again with the newsletter, it was a little bit easier after I had done the GoFundMe, but absolutely ask. The work that you do is valuable. You have given a lot of your time to become an expert in your field, and that expertise is worth something. Even if we live in a country right now where expertise is constantly questioned and constantly under assault, your affiliation with an excellent, reputable news organization is also an asset. And again, reputable news organizations are under kind of grave threat, but that is something that gives you, I think, immediate credibility. And the last thing I'll quickly say is it's really going to be your choice as to whether you want to go broad or narrow. My choice with reporting on Ukraine to go narrow but deep was driven in part by the family connection, but also I had spent a career as a general assignment reporter, broadly covering also military and veterans issues. And for me, it just came at the right time in my life and in my career that I wanted to focus on Ukraine exclusively. You may decide you want to be a bit more of an aggregator, or you may want to broadly focus on public health, or you may want to balance public health with other dimensions of health journalism. That's really for you to decide, and you're not going to necessarily know the answer right when you launch. Newsletters are allowed to evolve. Give yourself that kind of latitude to experiment, to stumble, and to find your way forward. You will. You're a journalist. You've done this. But what, as Liz has been talking about so articulately, is learning that sort of business aspect of it. You're worth the money, ask for it.
Great. Wonderful, wonderful advice from all three of you. Let's get another question from Lee Peters.
First, thank you all for doing this. My question, I'm probably the only person here who has absolutely no real journalism experience outside of school. I'm the student rep on the Georgia board. So my question was, how, from the very beginning, how are you growing your audience? What platforms do you use for that? How do you get in front of people? Because I know that doing some independent work while I'm still in school is something that would be really good on my resume and just good for experience, but I would like to do it for people and not necessarily to a subscriber base of 0. So that's my question.
Well, I would say, as someone who didn't come to a newsletter with any sort of built-in following, I am not a marquee name, in case you're wondering. Not that I need to remind anybody, but I'm nobody. I really am. And I have, Michelle's got an enormous following on social media, which was built over time. She too jumped in as an unknown. And it's to her credit that she's been able to build this kind of readership. And a lot of it is just thinking about it incrementally. You can be overwhelmed by thinking right out of the gate, I would like to have 10,000 readers or something along those lines. Think of it as each reader is. I think of it a little bit as like it's this sort of relationship that you have. You may never meet this person, you may never have an exchange with them, but you are now interfacing directly with your readers, and you can cultivate that at whatever pace feels right to you. I use social media. I don't pretend to imagine that I have gained a lot of readers from my social media platform simply because I don't have a big following. But if you're consistent about putting your work out there and you come to the work correctly, with integrity, with passion, people will pick up on that. It is an ocean out there of newsletters, and it is difficult to feel like you can stand out. But I think persistence is really essential. Michele is a great example of that, publishing every Tuesday. You may not choose to do that, but come with it with full commitment, and I think you will find that readers will seek you out. But I mean, in terms of the sort of the nuts and bolts of building a following, I think I'll defer to both Liz and Michele because they actually know what they're doing. But I've just done it.
No, nobody
trying to
knows what they're doing.
trying to think about it as a building process. You're not going to leave a legacy. This is something Liz referred to earlier, and I think it's an important point. This, not only is it an ocean of newsletters, but more big fish, more whales are entering the waters. And that does pose difficulties for the rest of us who are not brand names. But I think you can sort of defeat yourself before you even start by thinking about how I don't have as many readers as another newsletter. Don't think about it that way. Think about what you want to say and put that voice out there. And I can almost guarantee you, people will gravitate to your work.
That's right. Absolutely.
Well, that is so true. I think that the authenticity piece is so critical and so key. So whether you're trying to build an audience for your newsletter or whether you're trying to build an audience on social media, again, authenticity and you showing who you are is, I think, one of the most important things that you can do because people will trust you. And then they start to like you because they know that you're going to say what's on your mind and you have knowledge about some specific thing that they're following you for, right? People follow me because I work in politics and I tend to have some spicy, thoughts at about 5 a.m. I mean, that's usually, and so they might follow me on social media for that reason, but then they learn that, oh, she does all of this analysis of, elections and, certain things or some historical context or something. And then they end up becoming a subscriber. So it's being true to yourself and who you are. That's the most important thing. So don't try to do something just because you think that it's going to build you an audience. But figuring out where your people are going to be is probably the second piece. So if you're going to be on Substack, you're planning on starting there. I would recommend getting on Notes, getting your feet wet there, following a few people that you like their voice, and seeing how people are interacting with them. Dip your toe in, start them with the conversations and see how that feels. And then there are other social platforms that you can also work with, but Substack is going to be the most friendly to itself. That's another little thing about the algorithms, the social media algorithms. They all like their own content and their own platform best. So if you're going to be writing on Substack, putting your, starting there to build your social media audience there makes the most sense. Linking anything in Substack to over on like Threads or something like that, you're just not going to get the reach because they want native content. So it's little tricks and things like that that you learn over time. But just being yourself is probably the biggest and most important thing for you to remember.
Yeah, and I'll just very quickly chime in. The authenticity is key. The internet is awash in very like anonymous content, right? That just feels like it was made by a bot because a lot of it was. And so people are craving authenticity and connection. And part of the reason why creator model journalists and influencers have been such a rising space where people are going to for their news and information is because they feel like a very strong connection. I mean, the term for it, which sounds bad, but it's this parasocial connection, right? Where you feel like that Michele is a human being and I know a little bit about her and like there's something that I feel that we have in common, so I'm going to follow her because that builds trust. Um and that actually creates an incredible amount of opportunity because yeah, there are some people who have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers, like Caitlin Jetelina or Kara Swisher or Don Lemon. But it is very possible to make a good living. And I don't mean like getting wealthy, but making a good sustainable living with a much smaller audience because many people are looking for somebody who actually feels like they're speaking to you, right?
Yeah.
Part of the reason mainstream media has gone down, it's not just trust, it's also because many people feel that they are not being spoken to by mainstream media, that they are not a part of the calculation because there's one dominant perspective and one dominant audience that they are often speaking to. So the fact that there is this diversity of voices and opinions and faces and people who are coming to this work like Martin and Michele means that like each of us will find a niche loyal audience and it's much easier actually to monetize a niche loyal audience that's smaller than it is a big scaled one at this point because if they are loyal, they are going to be motivated, as we talked about earlier, into wanting to support the work and see you successful.
Thank you all.
Do we have any? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Lee. Do we have any other questions from the audience?
There's one from Ruth, and it's a question for Liz. She says, how can we find more information about the Muslim journalist creator cohort?
The best thing for you to do is to go to the website of Going Solo, which is our training module. I'll actually drop it in the chat right now. And on that page, you can sign up on the wait list for Going Solo, and we send out messages to people who are on that wait list about upcoming cohorts, including the Muslim Accelerator. We are in the middle of that cohort right now, the first one of that, but the funders are so happy about it, they want to do a second. So we will probably be making a announcement over the summer for a call for applications for that cohort. And there will be several others. We're thinking about one for local civic creators as well. And there may be some others that I can't spoil right now, but so the best thing to do is go and sign up for that wait list.
Any other questions from the audience? All right,
I sort of have a follow-up to mine if we have a minute.
Oh yeah, go right ahead, Lee.
Yeah, it was already sort of mentioned, but if you looking back on it, where you are now, what are some mistakes you may have made along the way that looking back you would avoid, or some successes that you've had that looking back you wish you had made earlier, that sort of stuff?
It's as if he read my crib sheet.
Well, I would
Uh,
say, um, so I feel quite fortunate with the way things have unfolded. Um, and I'm still not like adept at self promotion. I think something that Michelle mentioned is pretty critical, is that these platforms do handle to some degree a kind of promotion. If you're following people who are in the sort of same sphere, if you're posting on something like Notes, you kind of attract some like-minded folks. Um, I think if I look back at what I've done up to this point, I wish I had started a little sooner. Um, Throughout 2022, the first year of the war, as I was posting additional dispatches on social media, on Facebook, on X when I was still on there, um, that was already me recognizing there's so much more in my notebook that I want to share. And I want to write about this in a way that isn't sort of tethered or confined by sort of legacy media considerations. Not because I wanted to use a lot of profanity or anything like that, but simply because I think there's a way to tell stories that still have a lot of journalistic heft, but that are also more accessible on a personal level. And so I'll give one quick example. When I was on that first visit, when the war broke out, I was in Lviv, a western city where a lot of refugees, millions of refugees, were flowing through as they either resettled in the western part of Ukraine or left the country. And one of the editors at the Monitor asked me to write a story about Zelensky and about how he's, was suddenly the most sort of popular, most popular president or prime minister in the world, and how this was sort of a Churchill moment. And I didn't just necessarily disagree with the logic of that story, but it was so at odds with what I felt called to do while on the ground in the midst of this massive migration. Again, the biggest migration of refugees since World War II. That's where I felt my internal compass leading me. And I think if I had switched over to a newsletter sooner, I would have had not only more autonomy to do that, but sort of greater confidence that I could do that and also find an audience. And that goes back again to what Michelle and Liz are describing as kind of authenticity. People, we talk all the time about media literacy, but boy, do people have great BS detectors when it comes to figuring out whether or not you're actually writing from with an authentic perspective. And I know AI is muddying the waters terribly, and it will be harder for people, I think, to distinguish between what is real, what is manufactured. But you also have the advantage of writing about something that nobody else necessarily knows. My example with Ukraine is a little bit different. You can't make up what goes on the ground in Ukraine. You're either there or you're not. But that's it's not exclusive to that kind of reporting. So as you think about moving forward with your own work, I would just say keep that in mind, and I would encourage you to plunge into the project and let someone turn down those voices that might be discouraging you. I mean, internally, I had to deal with that myself. It was just there was some sort of negative dissonance. Don't listen to that. You can do it. Do it.
Hmm.
I think I
Liz,
would,
mm,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I would have two pieces of advice for myself for a younger Michelle, and both of them would have to do with doing things sooner, which is funny since I started in 2016. But it's actually starting to be more outspoken outside of the newsletter. And that's something that I didn't even really start, believe it or not, until truly earlier this year. So right around November, December, I started being a lot more prolific in my social media. And my audience grew pretty tremendously after that. So that's one of the reasons that I can say to people, if you are authentic and if you are truly, you know, who you are, then you should just be that person all the time. I was always I called myself the shadow tweeter. I would text things to friends that had big audiences and say, you should say this. And then it would do great and I would feel fine. And I didn't need to have my face in front of this. It didn't matter, right? And that wasn't really what I was going for. I was very happy with what I was doing. I didn't quite understand the impact that having a larger audience and having a bigger platform could have. And so I wish that I would have just gone ahead and put those words out under my own name. I don't know exactly what I was afraid of, but that's okay. I learned the lesson and here I am now. Same thing with not asking for money sooner. I do have my Small Deeds will always be a free newsletter if people want it free. It will always, though, now have a paid version if someone wants to buy me a coffee or, become a paid subscriber. There is an option for that. I strongly recommend that even as you start out, even if you don't feel comfortable yet asking for, and you should always ask for founding members and for something each month. But even if you don't want to make it fully paid, the 100%, at least give people the ability to show you how much they value the work that you're doing. That's really important too. So I think both of those come from, a place of not valuing our own selves enough at the very beginning. And so I think I probably would have valued what I brought to the table a lot more from the start.
Good.
Yeah, and I mean, my perspective is a little bit different because I'm helping folks like Michelle and Martin versus doing it all myself. Although I do have a weekly newsletter, which is free also because it's for people like you. So you can also find that at the website to subscribe to, where I write every Friday about the creator journalism space. But I would say, learn about the business side of journalism, and for multiple reasons, whether you're freelancing or you want to do this work or your ultimate goal is to find a role within a news organization, it will stand you in good stead to understand a little bit more about how this work is funded. If you want to do it independently, you will learn how to like what it takes, right? And how to monetize it. If you want to work in a news organization, it will make you a better advocate for yourself when you're negotiating for raises. As a freelancer, I think it's important to understand too, because freelance budgets are often one of the first things to get cut when times get tough. So learn more about the business. And then just to kind of double click on what Michelle was saying about getting out there and engaging with the audience in multiple ways. The most successful folks who are doing this work, I find, engage with their audience in a real way. And that's been another, I think, kind of mindset shift for a lot of journalists who came up in the early 2000s and mid 2000s. It's where we were told to like stay away from the comment sections because they were a garbage fire. And many of our sites like just did away with comments. Audiences are not only craving connection in like who they're following and getting their news from, they actually want to connect with you, right? Like they want to know that you are engaged with them and listening to them. And I have found that in these audiences that follow people like Michelle and others, that it's actually a very high level conversation. It's not a flame war in the way that comment sections on large media company news organization websites were in the past. And so that is another value. It's also another way for you to understand how to better serve your audience, what they're looking for, get story ideas for you to be transparent with your audience. So it comes to like the ethics and credibility. So think about like how willing you are to engage and be an engaged person with that audience that you're trying to serve and build.
These are such great ideas, great thoughts. And I just wanted to ask, I guess, one more question for all of you guys to answer. Do you feel like, where do you feel like um, journalism's going? And maybe if you can sum it up pretty quickly. Katya's probably going, what? But if you can give me a sense of where you think your work is going to go, maybe in the next year with your newsletter. Do you see it changing, evolving, and maybe Project C? What have you got coming down the pike?
Yeah, I mean, we are continuing to support journalists who are making this move. The layoffs have not slowed down. And the people who want to keep doing this work, in some cases, the only way they can keep doing it is by going independent. And by the way, that is true for people who are graduating as undergrads from journalism schools too. It has never been as difficult to find a entry-level job in a news organization as it is right now. So I don't see kind of like the work we're doing slowing down at any point. But if anything, we're trying to evolve to meet the moment and kind of skate to where the puck is, like as things continue to change and as different platforms arise. We're definitely looking a lot more at federated platforms as a home for journalism and very interested in them as a way for journalists to continue to be, or journalism creators to be able to continue to own their own destiny. At the same time, the work that we're doing with the Independent Journalism Atlas is very much about infrastructure and world building to allow the people doing this work to do it more sustainably. So that's what we're going to do. And I think in the next year or two, we're going to see more pieces of that infrastructure swing into place.
Great. Martin, how about you?
Well, thank you again, Patty, for the chance to participate in this wonderful conversation. I've learned a lot, and so I appreciate the chance just to be able to listen. Um, you know, I'm heartened to see more people starting newsletters because they're often doing this as a result of their own passion. The cold reality, as Liz just described, is that unfortunately paying positions with legacy media are becoming fewer and fewer. I To be fully candid, I do have a little bit of anxiety about the meltdown of legacy media from the standpoint of democracy. Right. So people are even as I believe strongly in the integrity of so many different newsletters to which I subscribe. I sometimes worry that we're not having a broader, more common conversation. Now, what Michele does, I think, is notable in that regard because it is a broad tent. But as we lose these flagpoles in communities, like here in Sacramento, for instance, Cal Matters, with Liz is working with, it's a wonderful nonprofit news organization. But in terms of city coverage, okay, the Sacramento Bee is a shell of what it once was. No offense to anybody on here who might be with the Bee, but and so you can go to individual newsletters and become informed. But I worry about being able to see a little bit more of that broader perspective, even as I recognize that more and more newsletters are also providing that kind of service. Like the Bulwark, for instance, is another one, right, where you can kind of get that little bit broader perspective. On a personal level, I'm Geppetto, like I'm just sort of, doing my little carpentry and sort of proceeding in that fashion. I don't try to torture myself or delude myself with thoughts of as many subscribers as Michele has. The work is a calling, not to sound too grandiose about it, but it is. I mean, it's both full commitment of head and heart. So for me, the choice is made because I care that deeply about what is going on in Ukraine, and that will include after what I hope will be the end of the war, because then there is the after war, and as Patty, you know so well, there's so much that happens when these wars are quote over. So I anticipate continuing to write about Ukraine for the foreseeable future.
Thank you. Michele?
Sure. So I'll be brief. I know that we're running out of time. But for me personally and specifically, it's probably worth me letting everyone know as well that I'm the executive director and the co-founder of a political organization called Every State Blue that funds down ballot candidates. We crowdfund for people who are running, as I like to say, in the reddest, roughest, toughest places in the country. So we help people who are running hard in hard places. And that came about because of Small Deeds. That actually came about because of a relationship that I created with the person who was the founder. And we see things eye to eye, and he's now become my brother, and we've worked together since 2017. And because of that, because of my work there and helping candidates across the country, over the next 6 months, I'm going to be doing a series of weekly lives and interviews of candidates that are running all over the country that we are supporting. Some people in Idaho and Utah, and, I mean, just really some interesting folks that have really great stories. So I'm excited to be able to give them a platform to share the story of how they're doing something that is truly remarkable and interesting and different. And I get to talk to those people all the time. And so I'm really eager to tell those stories of those candidates and what they're going through and the kinds of conversations that they're having at the doors. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So if folks, want to subscribe to Small Deeds, I'll be sort of cross-posting those kinds of conversations from Every State Blues Substack, which we have one, and Small Deeds.
Wow, what a blessing that you have Small Deeds to get to cross-pollinate that way.
Exactly.
I'm going to throw back to Katja, but thank you all so much for attending this evening. And thank you to our wonderful panelists. We have looked forward to this for months, and you all delivered in a big, big way. Thank you so much for this evening.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us. Lovely.
Thank you so much. Patty and I, we were joking a little bit when we were preparing for this the other day, or having one of our many prep calls, and we will probably need part 2 of this. And now I'm absolutely certain we do need part 2 of this. So let's get planning, Patty. So thank you so much for moderating, Patty. Thank you to our amazing panelists, Liz, Michele, and Martin, for fantastic insights. And thank you all for asking great questions. I learned a ton. I will probably review this recording and really listen to it again, which again brings me to the point that the recording will be made available to all of you in a follow-up email along with the post-event survey. And we have some materials that we'd like to share with you, and some resources that panelists put in the chat, but we will also put it in that post-event email to everyone who attended tonight. If you enjoyed the session, then please follow SPJ Georgia on social media and check out our website. We try to usually offer a mix of in-person and virtual events. And if you're interested in membership, then please drop us an email at spjgeorgia@gmail.com. And that concludes our conversation about creator journalism. Thank you all for joining tonight, and have a good rest of your evening, and stay safe. Thank you. And Patty and Janelle, if you would stay for a second.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Martin. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martin. That was fantastic.
Thank you very, very much. It really, really an honor and a privilege. So thank you so much, and great, Patty, to finally kind of meet you after all these years. And we'll talk soon.
Same
Get
here.
ready for part 2.
Soon. Yeah,
Okay.
no joke.
Yeah, part 2. Yes,
All right.
we'll see for part 2.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you both. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Give it a second. Give me a sec here.
Okey doke.
Okay. So,
Yay.
hold on.
Is Janelle here?
No, I think she signed off quickly, which is fine. I just didn't want her to. I just kicked out. I'm sorry to say, I just kicked out.
Laura?
I kicked out. No, I think they probably left it's not that they probably left. I kicked out Laura and Meredith because, yeah. anyway, because I would have called anyway. I think it went very, very well. You did a fantastic job moderating. I think you hit all the points. I think it flowed well. I think everyone got their questions, and I think it was really, really successful. And I thought it was super interesting. I mean, I will rewatch this video because, when you're organizing, you can only listen to, and it's probably the same for you, kind of with one ear, but I really want to focus on what they said. It was probably one of the most substantive, events that we have done. I mean, that every single one was high level, really. I think it was fantastic.
I thought they would be good. And especially Liz is just so, God, she's smart. But they were all
everyone, and they had different energy, but all very good, very engaging, and they all had something
good stories to tell, good anecdotes to share. Just, oh man. And I really think we could get all of them back on. I mean, and have another really good chat.
Have another session, or bring in people who've actually, kind of
like
done
you
it.
said, have Karen come in.
I think something, and that would have been a question that I had basically on my list, but Lee, our student rep, basically asked that question. I still do think the bar is high. And when Liz talks about marquee names, I do think it's definitely easier if you already have that name recognition, if you have that expertise, whatever. So I would like to hear a little bit more, and maybe next time we can get someone on there who's just starting out and does not have this career in legacy media or on TV, and how they're doing that. Because I'd be really, she answered that question in theory. I'm still not convinced.
Because even Martin, he's got enough subscribers to help fund 2 6 to 8 week trips to Ukraine a year. That's pretty substantial.
That's pretty good. But when he launched it, he already was a household name in journalism.
He had enough of a career, a 30-year career in journalism.
Exactly.
So, if Lee is starting this, and I think I'm a nobody in journalism. No, that's not true. Because when I was on Twitter, I had over 500, 700, I don't even know how many followers. And I remember thinking, where did all these people come from? And it was because of baseball. Because I had ball players that followed me.
Exactly. And these kind of things, I think I would have liked to have a little bit more, and that is not criticism of the panelists.
And that's what Michele was talking about.
That was what she was talking about. I think if you have that expertise and that very specific, so in response to Lee, I really liked her question. And the next time I really would like to get more of this very hands-on tips for people just starting out, not just in newsletters or in creator journalism, but also in journalism in general. Because for them it's hard, because the classic way is for the more successful creator journalists is they did have a career and a name recognition in legacy media and then switched over. So they took their name with them and their specialty and all of that. You can build it, there is no doubt. But there, I think, that's the critical point where maybe but I absolutely do see enough demand and possibility and need for part 2. I'm not joking. I really mean it.
Well, certainly based on, when we said, or you said, doing another part, people were like, yes, So
no, I think, we discussed earlier this week, or when we talked last time, we said, and we said it a little bit jokingly because we were so excited about it.
Yeah, it was.
No, I think it went. Congratulations, Patty. I think you had really, you came up with this topic. You had really a good nose for this. You had a good instinct that this would be a big thing. And it went very well with the payment model. We had at the peak 26 people, and we helped. I think in the end, and always people fizzle out a little bit versus the end, we still had 23. And that's
Oh,
pretty,
that's very good.
that is really, really good. So, and we had like at the end over 10 people paying, and that is not bad. That all shows me we can move forward with that model and
We
probably charge a little more.
did we actually make money?
We actually did make money. I mean, it's not a ton, but we did make money. So, which brings me to one last point. Either you do it or I do it. Definitely write the panelists an email.
Oh,
Would
yeah.
you get, or have you already done that? Get their mailing addresses, because what we
Sure.
usually do is write a little thank you card, you know,
Sure.
and a Starbucks gift card, $25. It's not, I mean, we can pay, but it's a gesture of, hey, thank you.
Right.
No,
Of goodwill. Sure.
for-
Sure.
Exactly. So if you could ask them for their mailing addresses, that'd be
I'll be
fantastic.
happy to do it.
That'd be great.
Absolutely. Mailing address. Write this down right now. All right.
And
Oh
then
my
I
gosh.
was trying at some point, I put all their newsletters in the chat,
Yep.
and I was trying to put that PDF, and I had downloaded that into my computer. And since it went through the cloud, the SPJ, I couldn't access it. But we'll do that follow-up email
Right.
with a survey, with all the documents. I'll go through the chat and we put it all in there. And then we add that PDF of this
Perfect.
report that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that'll be good.
Great.
Cool.
Yay.
It went super well. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for all your support. I mean, from the get-go, when I mentioned it, you were like, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I am serious. And, you know, I'm gonna revisit this and rewatch it and really sit there as a student to learn and take it all in, because
Well, I mean, and you're doing something like this next week. So, I mean, you're going to be
mine is more about side gigs for freelancers, basically how to make the business work, and the creator journalism is one aspect of it. But it's going to be a big aspect. I mean, I just wrote things down and it inspired me.
yeah.
I'll let you know how that went at the conference.
Yeah. When are you going?
Wednesday. I'm
Okay,
leaving
cool.
Wednesday, and then my session is on Friday. So,
All
and
right.
one of Liz's students or graduates or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call them, Karen Landman, who she's going to be on my panel. So she has just launched her newsletter, and it's a public health, type
it's
of
public
thing.
health.
And she just launched it like a month ago or so.
Okay.
So she's still trying and testing and whatever. And she's also has done the social media class with Liz. So she's learning that, and she's going to talk about her journey basically. So
Cool.
So I'll let you know.
And I think she would be a great panelist. And if who was it? Rebecca. I mean, if it turns out she ends up doing a newsletter, wouldn't it be great if she came on?
Yeah.
As a panelist.
She's a horrible panelist. I know her well.
Oh,
she's a whiny. She's fine in the questions, but she will not shut up. She will.
Oh, okay. Well, then never mind.
I'm just saying. I like her. She's a sweet person. I'm very sorry that they shut down.
I am too.
She's done a fantastic job, but her on panels she will not shut up.
Oh, well, that's too bad. Well, then we won't have her.
Because I loved it how they stuck to it. They were in detail enough but they also were focused,
Yeah.
and questions were focused. So I think I'm very happy.
Yay. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
For all of your support. I appreciate it. When I get back from France, we go out for lunch.
We do. When are you leaving?
It was 3 weeks from this past Tuesday, so soon.
Yeah, 2.5 weeks. Yeah, that's going to be very soon. Yeah,
I'm so excited.
Before you leave, Patty, let's find a new Freelance Fridays date, so we keep the momentum going.
Right. Well,
maybe late June or something like that.
I think we had picked the 26th of June.
Have we? Have we already?
Well, that was the date I had picked on the when we met for the board meeting.
Yeah, you have. And I am so sorry. Yes, yes,
that's okay.
Have.
But I didn't pick a place.
Exactly.
Yet.
We were talking about maybe, I
know a place in Peachtree Corners. Peachtree Corners, which is Norcross area.
Yeah, I know.
And it's a pretty cool, It's a nice little coffee shop. Now, nothing's easy to get to there. You know what I mean? It's like, but is it easy to get to Decatur? Not necessarily.
No, no. And we got to try different places. I mean, people who are more on the north side, maybe, we try, and if after a while we feel okay.
I'll send you
Yeah,
the location, and you can let me know what you think. But
definitely. Please do that.
coffee shop, and but yeah, I think we don't want to necessarily go back to the reading room.
No, I think we want to hit a few different areas in Metro Atlanta. And we had Decatur. We can look at something Buckhead Midtown. We can
Sure,
go to that area. We can do Norcross. We can do at one point kind of Cobb County. We have to go more into them because we have
Roswell.
some people, Roswell, exactly that area, Roswell more versus Marietta, East Cobb, because we have a couple people there,
Yeah.
but maybe not next time. Maybe this time, really, I like the Norcross idea. Maybe Midtown Bucket, and
Okay.
then maybe go to the north side, and then maybe
What's
the
in
south side.
Midtown? Is Midtown Buckhead good? Do you want to do that one?
Yeah, if I would have to look. I think I can find some places. But send me to the Norcross thing. I can look a little
Okay.
bit into coffee shops in the Midtown Bucket area, and then we can take it from there.
It's not really Norcross, it's Peachtree
Yeah,
Corners.
Peachtree Corners. Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
it's close.
I
It's
just
close.
happen to know it because I used to work over there. It's very cute.
Please send me that, and that may be a good one. Love it.
Anyway.
Okay,
Oh, it just went
great.
so well.
It went very well. I think, yeah, you can be very proud of yourself. I love
Well,
it. It was great.
I'm just proud of the team. Yay,
That
team.
well, that was your making. We were just back office here, so
No,
awesome.
I needed a lot of encouragement, a lot of help, and you gave it, so I appreciate
Well,
it.
no, that you were a real pro, so you
Oh,
sounded like a pro.
thanks.
It was fantastic. Thank you,
Thanks a
Patty.
bunch.
Have a glass of wine, chill, whatever.
I really
I
like your
will.
blouse.
Thank you, thank you. I got that in Munich when I was
Did
in.
you? I thought it might
Yes.
be German. I love the
See,
flowers. It
I
looks
had one.
very
It's actually
German.
Antwerp. It's Belgium. It's a designer from Antwerp. So I just saw
Ooh,
it, but I finally had the time. I had one day during my whole Germany trip, one day where I could, shop and chill and whatever. And
I
this is great.
really like that.
Thank you.
So, all right.
It's a premiere tonight. It's a debut for the
I,
shirt.
I recommend it highly for your event next week. You look very pretty in navy.
Oh,
It
thank
is
you so
navy,
much.
yes?
It's Navy. Yes, it's Navy. Yes, yes.
All
Okay.
right.
Awesome. Thank you so
All
much.
right. Well, have a good evening. Have a good long weekend.
We're driving to Charlottesville tomorrow, which is an 8-hour drive for a
Wow.
wedding on Saturday. Tomorrow night, like, night before reception type of thing. And then the wedding is Saturday, and then we're driving back Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. You enjoy your long weekend.
I'll enjoy your long weekend for you.
Please do so. Okay. Thank you so much, Patty. It
All
was
right. Bye,
fantastic.
friend.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. Bye. Bye.
Bye.